Welcome back to Jersey Matters. In a way too early poll, Governor Phil Murphy has a commanding lead already over Republican Jack Ciattarelli with over twice the support. We spoke with Ashley Koning, director of the Eagleton Center for Public Interest Polling, about the latest Rutgers Eagleton poll. Ashley, as always, thanks so much for joining us. Congratulations, you were the first ones out, it seems, with a head-to-head between Jack Ciattarelli and Phil Murphy, the first poll out. Tell us what it said.
So this is informative, right? We are several months away from an election. At the time of fielding, we didn't even know if Ciattarelli was actually going to be the Republican nominee, but let's have some fun and let's see hypothetically where the election would be today. When we did this, we actually did it in two different ways. We talked about Phil Murphy just being reelected, if you would definitely reelect him, if you would consider voting for somebody else, or if you would definitely vote for somebody else. And we see that Murphy has a lead in this instance against an ambiguous other candidate, against an ambiguous opponent. And so when we add Ciattarelli's name to that, we actually see his lead increase even more. 52% of registered voters say that they would vote for Phil Murphy, 26% for Jack Ciattarelli. Independents and Democrats obviously siding with Murphy, Republicans siding with Ciattarelli, but Ciattarelli not especially as likely as Phil Murphy to shore up that party-based support as much as Phil Murphy does.
There's a big asterisk, though, and you mentioned it, and when you said we had a little fun with this, there's a big asterisk because he had not even won the Republican primary yet. And so Republicans were split at that point. As we know, the other candidates got as many votes as he did. And so now you would believe that the Republican Party would coalesce a little bit. And a lot of people still, even though he's been around for a while, don't know who Jack Ciattarelli is. And I'm certain the advertising is going to come out introducing himself and attacking Phil Murphy. So as you pointed out, this is way early. You don't expect people to take this too seriously. It's just a snapshot in time, right?
That is perfect. You get an A+ in survey research class because a snapshot in time is the perfect way to describe it. In fact, polls are not meant to be predictors. Let's reflect on that, especially as we're heading to yet another election cycle in New Jersey. This is simply to understand the electorate and the ideological mood and policy views of the electorate. This is not meant to predict a race. But certainly now is the time for Ciattarelli to beef up that name recognition, because as we saw from our latest poll, about 75% of New Jerseyans have no opinion on him or they don't know who he is. 50% specifically say they do not know who Jack Ciattarelli is. And this is a really large name recognition deficit, much larger, almost twice as large as what Murphy faced when he was running his first time around.
And so he has an opportunity to introduce himself. What about Phil Murphy? And this might be more relevant. His favorability rating, his job approval rating. What did you see there?
So we definitely saw some easement from the skyrocketing highs we saw during the pandemic, especially from April. We slipped a few points in October, and now we slipped a few more points. But hey, these are solid ratings that any politician would want to have, especially when dealing with an ongoing crisis, with difficult decision making ahead as a pandemic eases. Or hopefully slows down, and especially leading into an election year. 47% of New Jerseyans say they're currently favorable toward Governor Murphy right now, 36% unfavorable. His job approval even higher at 55% approve and 40% disapprove.
But as you mentioned, it used to be much higher. Should we read anything into that it was so high and now it's going down? Does that show a trajectory or not?
I mean, yes, there's a trajectory, but this is just simple rally around the flag effect. We saw this with President Bush back during 9/11. We certainly saw this in our own home state with Governor Christie back during Hurricane Sandy. We saw huge double-digit drops between Hurricane Sandy and re-election, and then when Bridgegate had hit following his landslide re-election. So this is normal. This is back regressing to the mean. Phil Murphy's numbers have always kind of been middle of the road, stronger than some other governors in the past, but always kind of middle of the pack around the 50% range. So these are really solid ratings heading into an election. When we look at different issues, though, we see that he is incredibly strong when we give him a report card on the COVID pandemic. But of course, his least popular issue, where he is least popular, receives the lowest marks, unsurprisingly, taxes. This is the number one issue perennially in the state for New Jerseyans, taxes, especially property taxes. Just 7% give Murphy an A on taxes, 31% give him an F.
Let's get on to some other things, because I'm certain you're going to do another poll on the race, and we're looking forward to hearing about that. But you just recently did a poll on COVID-19 and vaccinations. What did you find?
We found about 1 in 6 New Jerseyans say they probably or definitely will not get the vaccine. Actually, Governor Murphy just released new numbers that about 72% have at least one dose. And that's what our poll found. About 75%, 3/4 have said that they received the first dose of the vaccine. Among those remaining, over half of the currently unvaccinated say they definitely or probably won't get it. And among that group, half of those say there's nothing that will make them get it. No beer, no wine, no beach state pass. Absolutely nothing will convince them.
Now, you also polled several different issues when it comes to COVID-19. What were some of the surprising ones to you?
I think there's some really strong support in terms of getting back to normal, whether we're talking about fully reopening public schools, support that we see both among parents and those who are not parents within New Jersey, back to that in-person instruction, and also pretty solid support, whether we're talking strongly or somewhat support when it comes to healthcare workers being required to be vaccinated, when it comes to colleges and universities, Rutgers being the first in the nation to declare this, having their students required to be vaccinated to remain or attend campus, as well as having some kind of vaccine passport and having any employer require their employees to be vaccinated. So some pretty solid support there as we move forward in life, as well as, pretty decent levels of comfort with doing everyday things, whether it's especially attending things outdoors, especially attending things with people who are vaccinated, and especially going to retail stores, going to the barbershop, the hair salon, things that we've started to do more and more now that rates are dropping in terms of infections, hospitalizations, and deaths.
As always, thank you for your time. You're wonderful on television. Ashley Koning of the Rutgers Eagleton poll. Still to come.
Ever hear of a real-life fairy godmother? We'll introduce you to a woman who's being recognized as just that here in New Jersey. Coming up next on Jersey Matters.